Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, I have a very special guest. His name is Matt Akers. Last name is spelled Akers. And we've been talking and kind of been friends on Twitter. He's a researcher like me and was putting up posts about a subject I'm interested in, which is kind of these MKUltra doctors post-war, or even pre-war in the case of the doctor we're going to talk about, which is Ewen Cameron. I've done a show about him. It was more focused on one of his unwitting victims, the person who wrote the book. His name is Dr. Harvey Weinstein. He still teaches in Stanford. I had a little bit of back and forth correspondence with him. I tried to get him on my show. He politely declined. But he wrote a book called Father, Son, and CIA. It's kind of hard to come by. I think I paid like $20 for the paperback. But it goes in detail about what happened to Harvey Weinstein's father, who was a successful businessman and went in for treatment and came out a different person. And those lawsuits are still going on today. These lawsuits of what happened to Harvey Weinstein. And Harvey Weinstein is involved in kind of an anti-abuse, like a doctor abuse organization whose name I can't remember now, but it's in Berkeley, and I know you could probably look it up. I'll try to look it up and put it in the show notes. But the presentation I did was Father, Son, and CIA about this guy, Ewen Cameron, who's had a very interesting life, but Matt can talk more about that. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so for people who may not have heard your name, you're doing a lot of research online. Can you kind of talk about your background and what led you to become interested? I know you've done a lot of research in this guy, more than I've seen before. Can you just kind of talk about what led you into the research of MKUltra and Ewen Cameron?
Well, I basically just have always been fascinated by this stuff since I was young. I was born in the 80s, so X-Files and stuff like that were popular. And then there was James Ellroy's books that always seemed to sort of connect to this stuff. And I found William Bloom's Killing Hope. So just kind of spread out from all their weird conspiracy stuff and fiction and just basically history. The Canada stuff was interesting to me because, Canada actually admits it happened. The media has a bunch of news stories. The Fifth Estate has a bunch of segments on it. And so it was kind of fairly easy to get basic information from. But when you dug into it, it just got worse and worse. And I don't want to say obsessed, but I'm just fascinated by it.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting documentaries and stuff online you can see about this particular subject. But Ewen Cameron features large as one of the kind of dark artists or whatever, like up there with some of these other characters. But can you kind of talk about his background and what kind of led him all the way? He kind of had a pretty circuitous route to end up in Canada, right?
Yeah, so he was born in Scotland in 1901. And in 1924, he got a degree in medicine from the University of Glasgow. And then in 1925, he got a diploma in psychological medicine. So after that, he took a position as a resident at the Glasgow Royal Mental Hospital. He immigrated to the United States in 1926. And then after 2 years there, he moved to Switzerland to work at the, I think it's pronounced Bergolzi Clinic in Zurich. And the Bergolzi Clinic was the hospital that Carl Jung worked at in the early 1900s. And in fact, in 1902, Jung published a dissertation called On the Psychology and Pathology of So-Called Occult Phenomena, where he analyzed seances from a teenage medium. And also during that time, Jung practiced hypnosis. And in fact, I think right around that era, the David Cronenberg movie, Dangerous Method or something with Michael Fassbender takes place around then. And then, so while Cameron was at Zurich, he met the dean of Manitoba School of Medicine, Dr. A.T. Mathers. And Mathers was also the chief psychiatrist for Manitoba. Through Mathers, Cameron was hired at the Brandon Mental Hospital as head of the hospital's admission unit, which included organization of mental health services. This I'm quoting from a book. The Prairie Asylum was a repository for the rejects of local society. There were no distinction between the categories of madness. Brandon was considered end of the line for the Manitoba social transgressor, an institution of fear that equaled a state prison. A person could disappear into either, never to be seen again. So at this point, the pharmacopoeia for controlling mood and behavior still, depended on old and outdated medicines and snake roots. But Cameron was only 28 then, and he had basically a free hand to do whatever he wanted to with these people. And his first year in Canada, he lost himself in the works of Frederick Winslow Taylor, the founder of scientific management and the high priest of the cult of human engineering. So in 1911, Taylor published a work primarily designed to show managers how to get more from their workers. Cameron realized it could be adapted to make patients function more efficiently. He began to carry out his first psychological tests at Brandon, which were a combination of Taylor's work and tests the U.S. Army had used during World War I. The tests consisted of questions to determine psychological responses. They were useful to justify all kinds of experimental medical intervention. And one of the documents Cameron relied on were the principles laid down at the first conference of race betterment at Battle Creek, Michigan in 1914, where ideas were endorsed that focused attention on the mentally ill. I'm not quite sure what the conference of race betterment is, but
Right.
it doesn't sound very good.
It doesn't sound good. It's probably worth looking into. Probably
Yes.
one of those creepy interwar eugenics flavors. So he's early. He's before World War II. He's implementing kind of like the scientific, approach to psychiatry or psychology with all these interventions. So he didn't come when he started doing his stuff at McGill in the 50s. He was an experienced hand, which is actually kind of scary.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, and it was right at the beginning of his career. He was laser focused on this type of thing.
Right, and it goes on like you right here. It's insulin shock therapy, isolation, straitjackets, cage beds, the whole bit.
Yeah.
It was all there before World War II. So people say like, oh man, MKUltra kind of stuff started in 1953. Like it really, actually, I just posted something last month because it was the 70-year anniversary of the implementation of stuff. And you write, and we're going to talk about that. You show that Artichoke and Bluebird are even before the official timestamp of MKUltra starting. But yeah, there's a lot leading up to it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. I mean, even the whole idea of mind control and brainwashing it feels like it's been around forever. As long as there's been people. But
right. Even you can go back to the 19th century, mesmerize. It goes back to this guy called Mesmer, who was a hypnotist, and he was a stage hypnotist, and he was trying to manipulate people. So it even precedes the 20th century. The 20th century added this whole scientific flavor to it.
Yeah. So like in 1932 at Brandon, he ordered the outer fences removed and replaced with tree hedges. Certain wards were unlocked during the daytime, but patients had to work their way out of the mental hospital and prove they were worthy of release. But the jobs were like they shoveled rail cars full of coal by hand, and they were basically paid one plug of tobacco a week. In the winter, patients exercised only wearing light clothing and were told to keep active to stay warm. Uncooperative patients were harshly shaved or even dry shaved as punishment. Additional punishment included the wet towel treatment, where they were clubbed with a wet towel until they cooperated. One complaint mentioned was patients were cuffed to a bed to remedy staff boredom, or provoked until they lashed out and then beaten by staff. Now, I just want to stop here for 1 second, because his idea of patients having to work their way out of the mental hospital and given basically these slave labor jobs of shoveling coal with their hands. When I was reading this, I was thinking of Jonestown, how Jonestown essentially was like a slave labor camp,
right,
with punishments of beatings and humiliation and stuff like that. Plus, Jonestown was really stocked with medicine and chemical drugs.
Yeah, they had a full pharmaceutical retinue. Somebody went there and said there was like more drugs there than would be in your standard pharmacy, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was more drugs there than could like be used on the people there and keep them alive. It's just an insane amount of drugs. But then also, excuse me, I know the provoking patients until a beating. That's like a prison thing too, obviously. But that's another thing is the in the Iraq War. Holy crap! Why am I drawing a blank? The
just like going on at in Cuba.
No, Cuba. There's Cuba, but the big prison, the big
Abu Ghraib.
Abu Ghraib, yes, thank you. Yes. Where they did it was the same thing to remedy staff boredom. They were doing these humiliation things, and it was also, to me, they were also highly involved with MKUltra type techniques.
Right. Abu Ghraib. Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, it's all been implemented. So all this stuff goes back. The stuff in the present. I did a discussion with Kit Clarenberg about what they were doing, this MKUltra isolation, sensory deprivation stuff. To these guys, they're probably trying to just reprogram them too, which is even scarier. Some of these poor Arabic or Middle Eastern guys.
Yeah.
So it's still around. This is the beginning of it right here.
Yeah.
Cameron's one of them.
Yeah. So from 1936 to 1938, Cameron was a senior research psychiatrist in the research division of the Worcester State Hospital. And also during 36 to 38, Cameron was a very close associate to Roy G. Hoskins. The Bureau of Naval Research were associate to Roy G. Hopkins. The Bureau of Naval Research were employed. In recommendation letters, this was in the mid-30s, Cameron was very well regarded by the Rockefeller Foundation. At Albany, he became an enthusiastic proponent of lobotomies. He began to refer his patients for the procedure and would often stand in the operating room and watch it be done. Just creepy.
That's crazy.
Yeah. During this time, German doctors found comfort that, this is a quote from book 2, German doctors found comfort that eminent colleagues across the Atlantic and Britain believed that all born criminals can be identified by certain physical characteristics, and the solution, in the words of Henry H. Goddard, was to sterilize them, allow them to perform only lowly jobs, confine them to ghettos, discourage them from marrying outside their race, and use a pure American superior intelligence to control them. So shortly before Pearl Harbor, Cameron became a member of the Military Mobilization Committee of the American Psychiatric Association. This period coincided with an increasing number of conscientious objectors, mostly Quakers, who were prepared to endure the brutality of American mental hospitals rather than enlist. The second was the number of men rejected or discharged from military service for neuropsychiatric reasons. In all, 2 million of the 15 million inducted in the U.S. Armed Services would be rejected on such grounds, almost 20%. No other nation in World War II would have such a poor record. So the mental hospitals of the United States began to fill up with people who refused service or were not fit for service. At Albany, Cameron used them as his guinea pigs. And it was at this point, Cameron left Albany to accept a new position as the head of Department of Psychiatry at Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal,
right, which
Canada.
is part of McGill University.
Yes.
So, yeah, that's where it even gets worse, right? He kind of progressively just got worse and worse. Like no oversight, no consequence, a wide variety of guinea pigs. Maybe he was just used to guinea pigs, and so that's why he eventually turned on these kind of hapless people who had no idea what they were in for. Like they must not have known what they were in for in Canada, that this guy had been doing this already. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have no idea. But yeah, it seems like no oversight. But he, and another thing, he wasn't that old. He was like 38 at this point or something, maybe under 40. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just strange. Like people like think he came up with these techniques, or even I think he came up with these techniques out of the blue. That's not the case. So when all the stuff that went down with father son CIA, he was a experienced hand,
Yeah,
experienced psychiatrist, or I guess what is he, psychiatrist, right?
yeah. He also wrote a book in, I think, 1951 called like On the Entomology of the Cockroach, which I've never read, but just that title alone, I mean, I'm thinking like, I'm pretty sure he sees humanity as a cockroach, like, because I mean, he you don't find much stuff or any stuff about him ever writing about bugs, but then he's got this one book about cockroaches, and he's using mental patients and conscientious objectors and people who are not fit for service, and to me, it's like an almost detached, extreme disdain or something for humanity.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just want to move on to World War II. But so he was a part of the American Psychiatric Association in Washington, who held secret meetings. The psychiatrists were tasked with creating psychological profiles on Nazis and German citizens. Cameron came up with mass hysteria in a war situation, which would use German liberals to spread hysteria through the population. Alan Dulles was intrigued with Cameron's proposal that after the war, each surviving German over the age of 12 should receive a short course of electroshock treatment to burn out any remaining vestiges of Nazism. Due to his work with the American Psychiatric Association, to Dulles, he was a logical choice to send to Nuremberg to establish the state of mind of Rudolf Hess. So I just want to do a quick aside about Rudolf Hess.
Okay.
In May of 1941, Hess made a secret flight to Scotland with the avowed aim of a peace treaty with Winston Churchill. And he was arrested and held in an English prison and then brought to the Nuremberg trials after the end of the war. And he was pronounced sane by a British psychiatrist. But Hess was an early confidant and friend of Hitler. He was one of the men arrested after the beer hall putsch. While in prison, he acted as Hitler's secretary and was the person that transcribed Mein Kampf for him. Hess was also influenced by a wide variety of astrologers and occultists and read anything to do with Eastern mysteries or the power of the mind. So his flight...
he was a full New Ager. Hess was. He was also number 3 in the Nazi party. It was him, and then there was another guy who got killed in Czechoslovakia. I can't remember his name offhand, but yeah, Hess was up there. Hess took a bullet for Hitler in the beer hall putsch. So yeah, he was very close.
Oh, yeah. They still, even though I've seen that he was like Hitler's replacement, or considered to be Hitler's replacement, I also saw this other stuff about how he was a follower, and he was always looking for something. So I don't know.
That's what Hitler liked to surround himself with. So he was always they were all yes men. All the people close around Hitler were pretty much yes men.
Yeah, absolutely. But for speaking of Hess and the New Ager, his flight to England was actually based on astrology. So he was passed along astrological advice advocating for a peace mission to England. And the Duke of Hamilton, who was also into astrology, was persuaded to let it be known that he would entertain a visit from Hess. May 10th was selected as the date because an unusual conjunction of 6 planets in Taurus would take place at that time. But when Hess arrived, he was promptly arrested. And both the British and the Nazis just claimed him to be an absolute madman. And he was left in prison, and no one could talk to him. So he was, I don't know if it was solitary confinement or what, but he was basically from May of 41 until Nuremberg, he was in this prison.
And he was in prison until he died. I think he died in the 90s. They kept him in prison for 40 years. Yeah, and he was always complaining. He always thought he was being poisoned, and they were trying to influence his mind and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah. So back to Cameron and Dulles and Hess. According to Dulles, which I would take with a grain of salt, The man who was claimed to be Hess was actually an imposter, as the real Hess was executed shortly after arriving in Scotland. Uh, Dulles asked Cameron to examine Hess to find a scar that would prove it to be him. But the meeting proved to be unproductive because Hess had handcuffs on and the escort with him refused to take them off. So a physical exam was off the table, I'll get to that. However, during Hess's final statement, he appeared confused and didn't recognize many of his fellow Nazis, which to be skeptical, I will say, if he's been in solitary confinement for like 4 or 5 years, maybe, he went a little loopy and was loopy to begin with. Right. According to Hess, he says, people around me during my imprisonment acted towards me in a peculiar and incomprehensible way, in a way which led me to conclude that these people somehow were acting in an abnormal state of mind. Some of the ones who came to me in place of those who had been changed had strange eyes, glass like a dream. Hess was leading up to what exactly happened to him in the spring of 1942, prefaced by oaths to God that he will tell the truth and calling God as his witness. However, he was immediately cut short and told his time was up. So, Ewen Cameron doesn't necessarily have a history of just physical exams. It's always mental stuff. That's where his like defining feature as a psychiatrist. So, knowing the story came from Dulles about the scar, I have a hard time believing it. And I'm wondering if Cameron was sent to Nuremberg, maybe to, you could say, brainwash. I don't know if he did hypnosis or something to maybe find out what he knew, because obviously Cameron was working on interrogation techniques at that time. So I don't know. It's a very strange meeting between very strange people.
Yeah, no, it's very, and that whole thing to like, that's the whole cover. I'm just going to go assess his personality. But if you look through like so many things in American history, they send in these shrinks. There's all kinds of creepy shrinks around American events, all the way through everything. Like, so this is just one of the earliest examples. If somebody got this guy, they got Cameron to go talk to the third-ranking Nazi in the world who thought that he was trying to create a peace with England. That's why they got duped into that, which is it ties actually into Ian Fleming and Aleister Crowley, which is very strange. And that's how they lured. And Ian Fleming supposedly spoke German fluently and knew about Hess's interest in the occult. And that he was the one who came up with the astrological thing. And the whole thing about the Duke of Hamilton and what they call it, the link with some far right thing. A lot of it was bogus. So Hess thought he was going to talk to people who were on the far right who were going to help cure the war, and it was just a lure. It was a huge intelligence success, but it's all been locked up. But
wow,
yeah.
When I was reading about it, I saw Crowley's name pop up a bunch too, but that is a whole nother.
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing. He experimented with hypnosis as well. So. Yeah, just strange days. But yeah, just the Cameron, the fact that he's brought into Hess is really telling. And he eventually became the head of the World Psychiatric Council or something like that, or the American APA or something like that.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, he was head of I think it was all at the same time too. He was head of, I think it's American Psychiatric Association, the Canadian Psychiatric Association, and the World Psychiatric Association.
Wow.
I mean, he was
the top.
Yep, he was the top, absolutely. So, like during the post-war years, Cameron and Dulles still, had a friendship, and they would go to dinner parties and stuff. And Dulles's wife, Clover, was suffering from a deep depression. Mostly, I don't know about mostly, but a lot of it stemmed from Dulles's infidelities. He cheated on her constantly. So
Dulles supposedly had sex with like 1,000 different women. So yeah.
I believe
it was not like he found a lover or something.
Yeah.
He was a profligate womanizer. Is a good one.
Yeah, I don't want to get off.
It says a lot about his character.
I know.
When he died, Dulles died, his wife picked him up like dirty laundry. He died in a bed. She wrapped it up and took it to his body to the back door and left it there to get picked up. That's how much. No. That's how much
Wow.
contempt. Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Like dirty laundry. Like, no, he's done. Get him out of here.
I believe it, and he deserves it too.
Yeah, he's a monster. He's a
Yeah.
monster.
So Cameron got Clover to go to McGill to
Wow,
Allen
so she
Memorial.
traveled all the way to McGill. See,
Yeah.
Dulles was up around there. Dulles was born in very far north New York State. So these things are all fairly close to his kind of world. Like,
Yeah.
he's in between New York City and Montreal and stuff like that. Yeah. So,
Yeah, she somehow avoided the worst of it, though. I don't think she went to the sleep room. I don't think she had the insulin shock therapy or anything.
she
Actually,
didn't get the curare shots. Like, he was literally doing curare, like one of the most neurotoxic poisonous substances known to man. He was giving it to people.
wow.
With no consequence.
Yeah.
Never went to jail. Like, the
No.
whole, like, I mean, informed consent. You want to talk about informed consent? It didn't start with these kill shots. It was like going back here. Nobody busted these people back in the day. Yeah. So.
Yeah, they all lived. I mean, well,
yeah, just like Fauci's walking around like he's a mass murderer. Like, what the hell's going on? He's experimenting on people just like Cameron was with no. It's probably because of the connection between Fauci and Cameron is that they're both, curated. Somebody's allowing them to do this to get information. So Fauci's probably just doing what he's told by somebody higher up, which should scare the living daylights out of people.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So
the Rockefeller Foundation is all over this guy, right? And the Gates and Rockefeller Foundation are all over what happened.
The Gates Foundation is some
sinister
yes,
as hell.
Absolutely. Yeah. But so Clover avoided the Ewen Cameron treatment basically, but I wrote this down to get into later. But Alan Dulles' son did not. But I want to move into Project Bluebird and Artichoke.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Dulles' son was injured in
the Korean
War, right? And you sent me something that he just passed away, like over COVID, right? So like he was never. He had a brain injury, so he was never really the same, right?
Yeah. Yes. So Project Bluebird was the CIA's mind control project, which was in full flight by 1951. Officers were testing special interrogation techniques at secret prisons in Germany and Japan, studying the effects of various drugs and techniques like hypnosis, electroshock, and sensory deprivation. But at this point, no one was in charge of it. So with the Cold War heating up, Dulles believed mind control could be the decisive weapon of the coming age. Sidney Gottlieb was hired to head the program. In the summer of 1951, Dulles concluded that Bluebird was not wide-ranging or comprehensive enough. He directed that Bluebird be expanded and intensified and centralized. The new project was called Artichoke, apparently based on Dulles' favorite vegetable, which is like a rub it in your face type code name.
Interesting. But like it's like peeling back your brain, right, to get at the heart.
Yeah.
Like that's the symbolism. Yeah, it's all that.
Yeah. So around this time, brainwashing became popular around America. Brainwashing was a simple way to explain any aberrant behavior, from anti-Americanism abroad to unorthodox political views at home. If anybody had an idea that deviated from the main thought, they were brainwashed, usually in that time by the communists. The CIA had deep concern over the issue, feeling it was their responsibility to not lag behind the Russians or the Chinese. Much of the Artichoke work qualifies as a medical torture, dosing unwilling patients with drugs, subjecting them to extremes of temperature and sound, strapping them down to electroshock machines. And this type of stuff, this extremes of temperature, this was going on during World War II with the Japanese at the Unit 731. The same type of testing the human body, sticking them in cold, hot, loud, So a CIA memo written soon after Artichoke was launched, hints at its breadth. And these excerpts in particular from the memo make me think exactly of Ewen Cameron and what he would later be funded for. So the memo says, a considerable amount of research could profitably be expended in the field of sound. This research would include the effect on human beings of various types of vibrations, monotonous sounds, concussion, ultra-high frequency, ultrasonics, the effect of constantly repeated words, sounds, continuous suggestion, non-rhythmic sounds, whispering. If an electronically induced sleep could be obtained and that sleep is used as a mean for gaining hypnotic control of an individual, this apparatus might be of extreme value to the artichoke work. There are a great many psychological techniques that could be used in connection with the artichoke work, including moving or vibrating rooms, distorted rooms, the deliberate creation on an anxiety condition, the creation of panic, fear, or the exploitation of phobias, the general problem of disorientation and completely soundproof areas. So, by the middle of 1952, artichoke had gathered considerable momentum. Richard Helms recommended that it be expanded to include experiments of such an ultra-sensitive nature that they cannot and should not be handled by means of contracts which would associate CIA or the government work in question. Artichoke had become one of the most violently abusive projects ever sponsored by an agency of the United States government. In Dallas's opinion, it was now time to intensify and systematize it. On April 13th, 1953, Dulles approved of the research project that would be known as MKULTRA.
Yeah, we're just 70 years and almost a month away. That was it. So, yeah, 149 sub projects all over, billions of dollars, like millions and billions of dollars. Like it was it. Like the size of the Manhattan Project is off the charts.
Yeah.
All run by Dulles. Interesting. He was around. He was involved in some curious historical events in the U.S.
It's I would say, like every post-World War II until his death, his stink.
His stink was everywhere, like the foul aroma. Do you know that he had a club foot and walked with a limp? He was always trying to cover it up, but
yes,
he's always limping around too. Yeah, like a monster, like a movie villain or something. Yeah.
The Sidney Gottlieb had a clubfoot too.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they were
and Goebbels, all these characters, kind of. Yeah.
Goebbels had a clubfoot too.
Yeah, Goebbels had a clubfoot. Yeah. You can see him walking around. He's always trying to hide. They're all trying to hide it, but in the Eastern tradition, if you're reincarnated, like clubfoot is like a real bad sign of a bad past life. That's the way on the Eastern. That's what they view it.
Those three really prove that to be
true. Yeah, they prove that might be true. When you see them, you're like, wow, there might be something to that. Anyway.
So I wanted to, just a quick aside from McGill before Ewen Cameron. But so prior to Cameron's experiments in Canada, the CIA had already had a connection working for them at McGill University in Montreal. Mm-hmm. Donald O. Hebb was receiving grants as early as the 1940s from the Rockefeller Foundation, and in the early 50s through a CIA front company. Hebb was experimenting with sensory deprivation and its psychological effects. Hebb explained in his classified 1952 report, these experiments were measuring whether slight changes of attitude might be affected by shorter periods of isolation, intensified by wearing by light diffusing goggles, earphones through which white noise may be constantly delivered, and cardboard tubes over the subject's forearms so that his hands cannot be used for tactical perception of the environment. By this point, Hebb's colleague, Ewen Cameron, also began to work with this method. So Hebb used student volunteers, and including the students, including among them were the author Peter Dale Scott and the musician Leonard Cohen. Wow. And when you start, it seems like every Canadian in this period who went to McGill was a part of these studies. So it's crazy. But those two definitely.
How did you find out that he was involved in that? How I've heard of what do you call not Peter Dale Scott, but the other guy, but I didn't know that Leonard Cohen I'd heard, but I didn't know Peter Dale Scott. Where did you read that?
It's in Alfred McCoy's Torture and Impunity. Wow. And Peter Dale Scott wrote a poem about his experience. I don't have the name of the poem handy, but so Peter Dale Scott wrote a poem about being a part of this.
Maybe that's why he's such a that his mentality sensibility is that he's so anti the American empires that he went through some of the
Could
grief
be.
associated with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I used to walk by him when I was at Berkeley. I used to walk by Peter Dale Scott, back in early 90s. Because I was actually interested in his deep politics stuff back in the day. There was a website that I used to read called Deep Politics. This is like the very beginning of the internet. Never knew
he's
that.
interesting.
Yeah. 94. He's from Montreal, so it's not surprising that he went to McGill. But the Dulles brothers were born in Watertown, which is literally like just over the border from, or very close, I think, to Niagara Falls, somewhere around there. I think they're close to that, but it's like 50 miles from Montreal. So they're kind of know that location. Sorry.
So going back to Hebb's subjects, they started to have like unanticipated hallucinations akin to those induced by mescaline, and just mescaline was used by the Nazis for their interrogations. And wasn't mescaline like a biker Manson drug?
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think mescaline is like comes from like not a mushroom, some kind of plant. Yeah. Mescaline.
Okay. And, through these experiments, one student had developed a form of mental illness following the experiment. Subjects were seeing things in the experimental
peyote. That's
conditions.
from peyote. Yeah, it's peyote.
Oh, it's peyote? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's from peyote.
All right. One student felt his head was disconnected from his body, and another felt he had two bodies. I don't know if he was disassociating to try and stay sane in that environment. In June of 1958, the Office of Naval Research funded a symposium on sensory deprivation at the Harvard Medical School, featuring Hebb and other leading cognitive scientists of his generation. Their papers confirmed the significance of his discovery and further explored the devastating impact of sensory deprivation on the human mind. So Hebb retired from McGill in 1972. How are we doing on time?
Good. We got 20 minutes.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So going back to MKUltra, they needed a funding conduit, and out of that came the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology, or the Human Ecology Fund. Dr. James Monroe was told to set up a research foundation to provide a cover for further clandestine research involving doctors and scientists. It would be called the Society for the Investigation of Human Ecology and headquartered in a townhouse on East 78th Street, New York, close to Cornell. Dr. Harold Wolff agreed to be the new foundation's president, lending it immediate prestige and removing any suggestion of suspicion. Dr. Monroe was the executive secretary with a staff of 4 bureaucrats. He would handle the administration of funds, laundering them through the foundation so that they could not be traced back to the agency. And Dr. Harold Wolff was the chief of the neurology department at New York Hospital and Cornell Medical Center, and former president of the American Neurology Association, who became one of the agency's leading experts on mind control. So in Wolff's CIA grant proposal that he wrote for his Cornell research team, In Wolff's CIA grant proposal, he wrote his Cornell research team would test potentially useful secret drugs and various brain-damaging procedures on behalf of the agency to ascertain their fundamental effects on human brain functions and upon the subject's mood. Wolff carefully stipulated that any dangerous experiments would have to be conducted at CIA facilities, not in his hospital. So Wolff was asked by Dulles to treat his son, who we talked about earlier, Alan Jr., from his brain injury from the Korean War. Essentially, Dulles gave his kid to MKUltra research. The insulin therapy, I'm not sure if he got shock therapy, but his sister, and I would assume his mother, since she just threw Dulles out like a piece of garbage, were devastated. It was somebody with a brain injury who just got worse and worse and worse and worse due to this experimental torture treatment. It's not treatment. Right. So
It's off the charts. It's off the charts. For people who don't know this, Cornell is located in Ithaca, New York. Very interesting, kind of a strange place. This Five Finger Lakes that Hunter Biden is like based his whole life on. Like, I don't know what the hell he's going on there. He has a tattoo of the Five Finger Lakes in New York, but there's the other Cornell is a kind of satellite office in Manhattan of Cornell.
Okay.
So these guys are in downtown there. And I think that it was this downtown Manhattan place where around this time, Jolyon West was doing his residency, right? So when you finish your doctoral, your medical degree, then you go into residency. You're trying to find a good place to start your practice or start practice on people residency. And I think he did his residency, I'm almost positive, at this Cornell Medical Center in Manhattan.
Did he go directly from there to the University of Oklahoma?
Yes.
To do his crazy.
Yeah. So he bounced around. He has a pretty interesting different. He goes to different places, but I think he was in Wisconsin, undergrad Wisconsin, graduate work. Where did he go to graduate school? I can't remember. But yeah, then he bounced to Oklahoma and then to UCLA and then to the neuropsychiatric center or whatever. And who else? He's the graduate. What's the guy on TV always complaining about Trump? He's the psychiatrist. He came out of that. I see his face. I can't remember it right now.
Oh, I have no idea.
I'll figure it out.
Okay. So Dulles reached out at this point. Dulles reached out to Dr. Wilder Penfield, who was a neurosurgeon at McGill University, for help with MKUltra experiments. And then through this official relationship between the CIA, MKUltra, and Ewen Cameron became established. So I don't know if it was Dr. Monroe, Wolf, or Penfield, but they were basically like, they told Cameron to submit a grant proposal for these studies that he was doing, and they would pay for them through the Society for Human Ecology. So by 1957, he had began to receive a steady stream of funds through that.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this next portion is basically his experiments at McGill. But your episode with the Weinstein really covers it, but there's stuff I want to add to it.
Yeah, please do. Please go.
Okay. So this is a quote from a book. Cameron saw himself as an iconoclastic innovator, pushing psychiatry to embrace the latest pharmaceutical technology and the most cutting-edge developments in the newly influential behavioral sciences. Cameron's sleep room involved putting subjects into electric dream states through insulin overdoses, massive infusions of hallucinogenics like LSD and other experimental drugs, and alarming amounts of electroshock therapy, a process he called depatterning, to wipe the brain clean of bad behavior patterns. After blasting away these negative thoughts, Cameron sought to replace them with good ones through what he called psychic driving, which is playing taped messages encouraging positive behavior to his nearly comatose victims for between 16 and 20 hours a day, week after week, as they slipped in and out of consciousness. In one case, a patient underwent reprogramming in Cameron's sleep room for 101 days. So the sleep room was part of depatterning, where people would be kept in a coma and woken up and given stuff like LSD and PCP, which PCP, I have my only experiences with PCP are like from that show Cops, where every once in a while there would be a guy on PCP, nude, naked from head to toe. Yeah, just going crazy. And there's a slasher movie, I think it's called Home Sweet Home, with the Body by Jake guy. I don't know if you remember this guy, but his whole thing is that he's a mental patient who has a vial of PCP that he just drinks throughout the movie and slashes people up. So, I mean, you're in the sleep room, you're in darkness, you're in a coma, you're getting injections of hallucinogens, and in between that you're getting electroshock therapy. I believe electroshock therapy at that time, it was common for maybe 2 to 3 times a week, and he was doing it 2 to 3 times a day on people. And he was doing electroshock long after the majority of the medical community said this type of thing is not effective. It's torture. And then so psychic driving was Cameron had an associate, I think his name was Leonard Rubenstein, who was English or Scottish, that Cameron brought over. And this guy built all of Cameron's gadgets. One of the things he built was, I believe, was a football helmet with speakers in it. And they would record. Cameron would have psychiatric appointments with people, and they would record things about their problems. It'd be tape recorded. I'm not sure if it was with their consent, although I highly doubt it. And
I don't think none of his patients had informed consent. That's the crucial thing. Oh, we'll help you treat you with your depression. Here, have a football helmet. We're going to scream in your ear for 3 hours. Take some drugs. That's why. That's why these people are suing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so this Leonard Rubenstein, he, in addition to creating those machines, he would create the tape loops of, like, in Journey into Madness, I think one of the women, like, for weeks had a message of, like, I think it was like, I hate my mom, I hate my mom, I hate my, played 16 to 20 hours a day. And then after that, it was like, I love my dad, something like that. It was something, that's what they did. It was just this tape loop of this phrase repeated over and over and over again for weeks, months. There's a woman, I think her name's Mary Marrow, who was, she was studying to be a doctor, and she had some sort of breakdown. I mean, the people that he's dealing with are women who were postpartum depression or anxiety, stress, that sort of thing, who came to him for help, and he basically just abused them with wildly inappropriate ways. So a follow-up study conducted after Cameron left the Allen Memorial Institute found that 75% of his former patients were worse off after treatment than they were before they were admitted. Cameron himself indicated that the true aim of his CIA-funded research was not to improve patients' lives, but to contribute to the Cold War effort. Effort by perfecting the science of mind control. He compared his patients to prisoners of war who were undergoing interrogation, saying that they, like prisoners of the communists, tended to resist treatment and had to be broken down. In 1963, November 21st, 1963, he had a meeting with the aforementioned Dr. James Monroe at McGill. And I think the meeting was going on during the JFK assassination. Monroe left to take a phone call and came back and told Cameron that immediately his funding was getting cut by the CIA. Essentially, they were, cutting all funding for him in 63.
Wow, interesting timing. And he died of a massive heart attack in 67. So he really didn't, his kind of torture and human cruelty and violation of the Hippocratic Oath would not continue on forever, right?
Yeah. There's part of me. So he abruptly resigned from McGill, and he took all of his paperwork relating to his MKUltra sub-project, which was 68. The CIA went nuts, trying to figure out what to do because he has all the paperwork. And also an important part about Cameron is, even though he worked in Canada, and I don't know if he lived full time. I think he lived in a hotel while he worked. He did not want Canadian citizenship, and he hated French Canadians. So towards the end of his tenure at McGill, he became increasingly paranoid that the French Canadians were the reason he couldn't get funding anymore to do his work.
Wow, so he was like a psychiatrist who had psych problems then, huh?
Yeah,
there's no record of that, right?
That reminds me of somebody who is on an all-meat diet and cries frequently.
Yeah, cries so much, I'm going to cry. I have to watch him cry again. Right, because Jordan Peterson graduated from McGill. I mean, The timing is incredible. The other guy whose name I couldn't remember, who studied at the Neuropsychiatric Institution, is Sam Harris. It's undergone a different name. It's called like the Semel something else, like a different donor, but it's basically the same institution. So Sam Harris probably knows. And I think I would be prudent. I would recommend people watch his statements to see if he really believes what he says or whether he's trying to implant concepts into people's minds. Like he might be a little bit more subtle than you think, Sam Harris, because some of these guys learned this stuff. And Jolly West definitely knew it. Cameron probably did too.
Yeah.
Like it moves beyond like being honestly stating something towards like covert influence.
Yeah. Should we wrap up? I don't want to.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good time. Yeah.
Okay.
You've done a great job, Matt. Thanks so much for sharing all that information. I think it's really important. You see the background of this guy. Most people would think, like I would think, like this all started in 51 after post-war. No. It shows that this stuff was leading up to the post-war stuff, and that what the Nazis and the Japanese were doing these weird, experiments. A lot of it, hasn't been translated or it's still in secret offices, things like that. But it's just like unbelievable. They had their own, what do you call it, hamsters or whatever, test subjects that the Germans did the most horrible thing to them. The Japanese were actually super cruel as well. I mean, you see this human cruelty theme.
Yeah, it's very bad. If you don't mind, before I leave, I just want to cite the sources that I used for these.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Gordon Thomas, Journey into Madness. The Devil's Chessboard by David Talbot.
Great book.
Torture and Impunity by Alfred McCoy. What else? Poisoner in Chief by Stephen Kinzer. And also Vicep View Blogspot. Recluse, I think his name's Steven Snyder. Yeah. He has some really good articles on Ewen Cameron too. So all those things helped me kind of collate all this information.
Awesome. Yeah, no, really interesting. Great presentation. Matt, where's the best place for people to reach out with you if they have any follow-up or your social media?
Twitter.com/Matt Akers Music.
Matt Akers Music. And last name is spelled Akers, right? So it's all one word, Matt Akers Music. I'll put that in the show notes so people can go check out your excellent research and things like that. Okay. Thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate being on your show.
Cool. Awesome. Stay there.
Okay.